So although the term fake news has become a contemporary buzzword, the concept itself is not new at all. I mean, for centuries, people in power have used information to manipulate public opinion, to gain access to more power, to distort the truth. I mean, we've seen a history of that in our own country as well. I mean, some of the darkest periods in US history that we now look back on with a degree of shame were those eras where that propaganda was so omnipresent. I mean, I think about in my work, I've done a lot of research into McCarthyism. You know, the first Red Scare in the 19 teens and 20s, and then the second Scare in the 40s and 50s. And the way that worked with McCarthy in particular, he had his own brand of fake news. I mean, it was sitting up there at the congressional hearings or in press conferences, waving names of suspected communists. And in the meantime, they were not true. There was no factual basis to any of that. But the coverage of it was in and of itself not actual fake news as we're really talking about today, because the press is reporting what a government official is saying, what congressional hearings are discussing. I mean, that's it, that's truth. But the foundation of that material was propaganda. It was all about this culture war, this war on values, trying to ferret out dissidents and protesters and suspected communists. And they were doing that by manipulating the truth. The entire purpose of a free press and a democracy is to help us make informed decisions. You know, the press doesn't exist in a vacuum. Even though journalists sometimes do stories that are entertaining or that, you know, make us feel good or they're just a nice way to spend a Sunday, the real purpose of journalists and newspapers and magazine and television is to give us news that we can actually use to do something. So if that material that we're being fed is inaccurate, or even worse than that, if it's inaccurate and being used to intentionally mislead us, the very foundations of our democracy aren't true. We can't expect to make accurate decisions. We're not voting based on the full scope of information available, and we're just kind of falling in line with what people in power are trying to make us do. And it gets a little muddy when we're trying to parse out propaganda versus inaccurate reporting versus so-called fake news. And kind of how I would delineate those is I think of fake news, it doesn't necessarily have a propagandistic element. You know, we're seeing fake news being spread around that isn't exactly part of a coordinated campaign. It might be something that's solely meant to generate clicks. You know, it's clickbait to go to one of 100 fake news sites run by the same individuals to try to get some money. And some of these are quite profitable. And I think that profit motive is not the only factor, but a key factor in distinguishing some of this fake news versus propaganda. Because to me, historically, propaganda is a tool used by people in power to manipulate the public. And with this fake news, that's not always the case, but they're both dangerous in very distinct ways. As a practicing, working investigative journalist, this trend of labeling anything that people disagree with as fake news is harmful to me and to my entire craft. As a journalist, especially as an investigative journalist, that's my career is focused on uncovering political abuses, abuses of power, corruption. I depend on trust. Trust not only with my sources who are giving me confidential information or leaking documents, but trust with the public. That when I go forward with an investigation, that they know I've done my due diligence, that they know I've only relied on the best information, that I'm not misrepresenting myself or the data and research that I have. So this general climate where things like the New York Times and the Washington Post are being labeled as fake news by the President of the United States, it's not just a rhetorical device. I mean, this has real world implications for me doing my work. Because when I release a new investigation, it could just land with a thud because people just say, oh, that's fake news, or oh, I don't believe that. In other words, the danger to me is the same as the danger, I think, to all of us with fake news, that all of it is being treated as equally cynical, equally untrustworthy. And as a result, we're just becoming kind of numb to what's really being, in the good journalism that's being exposed. I think one of the primary dangers, in my opinion, of this fake news is that it's an outlet for people to do what I think all of us want to do, which is to find information that confirms what we already believe, or as we would call it here at U of M, this confirmation bias. So you're either seeking out or intentionally allowing yourself to take in information that proves what you want to believe. And we all do that to an extent. I think there's a lot of psychological research backing that up right now. But the entire challenge of being a citizen in a democracy, and I would argue the entire challenge of being a human being, is to constantly put our beliefs up to scrutiny. Fake news isn't doing that, and labeling fake things as fake news isn't doing that. It's just dismissing. It's selecting news and stories that confirm our beliefs and denying everything else. And when you do that, our entire culture comes to a standstill. I mean, we can't move forward in political discussions. We can't move forward with legislation, with government hearings, with voting, if we're just acting on information that we want to believe is true. That's not enough in a democracy.